listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And wait, is that another bear in the den? Who could that be?
Hey, it's Matt Brossard.
Yes, your ears are not deceiving you. We have our former co-host joining us tonight. Oh, Matt, it's so good to have you back. And it was so good for you to be my partner in crime over at Baltimore Comic-Con just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it was amazing. We got into lots of trouble, and what a great experience for my first major American comic book convention.
Yeah, and I just mentioned that we had attended Baltimore Comic-Con together. The next weekend I attended New York Comic-Con, and Brian was there for one day.
Yay!
So
that's all I can take.
Yeah, basically. And we're going to talk about our experiences there, and somewhere along the line we'll fill Steve in.
Oh, no, I just live vicariously through all you guys, so it's fine.
Okay. So, again, we started off talking about Baltimore Comic-Con. It was held just at the very end of September, and it was a 3-day con. The dates were... Who cares what the dates were? It was it was the last weekend of October, and this was actually the first time that I met Mr. Brossard in person.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I don't often visit the East Coast, and I reached out to you and I said, if I was going to come to a major comic book event on your side of the country, what would you like me to see? And you suggested Baltimore, and I thought it was a great choice. I had a lot of fun.
Great. So, Matt, we're nothing if not gracious to our guests. Yes, I threw the cliche in. Why don't you take us through what your Baltimore Comic-Con experience was like?
Yeah, sure. So let's see. The first day we hit the floor. We wandered around. We checked out, the vendors. We met with cosplayers. I took a lot of great photos. The first day went by so quickly. There was so much to take in, so many great costumes and things. And then I felt like I didn't really sort of get into the groove of it until Saturday, which is when I decided to dress up. I put on my Lex Luthor costume. And I've actually been having trouble figuring out what the origin of this costume is, but for those of you that know the meme about Lex Luthor stealing 40 cakes, it's that costume. So pink shirt, green pants, sort of a X-shaped bandolier thing around his chest. Got lots of great comments from people. They really enjoyed, a slightly irregular take on Lex Luthor. Ran into some great DC villains, pretty much from the same era too, to pose with. There was a great cheetah costume. There was a penguin that reminded me of Burgess Meredith. There was a fantastic costume from a guy that was dressed as Black Manta, and he actually made it into the finals for the costume contest at the end of that day. The cosplay scene was great. Some of my favorite costumes that I saw, there was a Quicksilver that ran around the convention with a speaker playing Time in a Bottle. That was amazing, and it was so funny watching people sort of perk up as they heard the tune playing, and then the recognition of the reference to Days of Future Past. So that was a lot of fun. Loved this family that did the Monarchs from Venture Brothers. They gender bent the two characters, so the wife or girlfriend was playing the Monarch, and the boyfriend was playing sort of like Dr. Boyfriend, and he had this great chest window, and they were really, really fun to see. And then I think the most impressive costume I saw was this guy who's on Instagram named Liquid Elvis, and he wore a working Hawkman costume with wings that would extend, it was probably about 12 feet wide, and he had a light up mace and everything. It was amazing. And then, the rest of the time we spent sitting in really interesting panels. We listened to a panel on the history of Shazam, which was fascinating and very timely since, both Captain Marvel and Shazam are hitting theaters in the next few months. And Shazam was sort of the mascot of the event, so picked up a T-shirt with Shazam on it, picked up some great tumblers with Shazam on it. Lots of really interesting info about that. Probably the most personally moving panel that we saw was listening to Dan Slott recount his experience in the industry. Dan Slott's a writer that I admit I didn't really know his personality very well. Not after reading so many comics of his. I kind of blame that on the fact that his Spider-Man project mixed so many different collaborators. There was usually a rotating team of writers and artists. They did the Brand New Day thing where Amazing Spider-Man had all of the other books collapsed down into one book that came out multiple times monthly, which was a great project, but it was one of those things where I think Dan Slott was doing fantastic work, and you couldn't really tell like where he was fitting into that chemistry. So he's one of those writers that I've read tons of his work, and he's never really stood out to me personality wise, but listening to him talk about his experience in the industry and observing, a person that's helmed one of the biggest books at Marvel. He's been shouldering the pressures of really important book for sales. And after all these years of working for Marvel and other companies, he still has so much enthusiasm for what he does. He still has so many stories that he's eager to tell. He was so uplifting and fun and cuddly and adorable, and it was a great thing for me to see because I've kind of felt like I've been questioning my interest in comics in the last couple of years. I feel like I missed one of the reboot cycles at Marvel, and it's like a record that skipped its beat, and now I just can't get into the groove of like the current status quo from either Marvel or DC. And so listening to Dan Slott and how much he loves comics still just sort of like made me feel like, you know what, there's a lot of really great things happening in comics still. This fills me with a lot of like enthusiasm for comics and for Spider-Man and for Fantastic Four. And the first thing that I bought when I got back to Canada was I picked up both of the trades from his Silver Surfer run, and what a great series for just epitomizing my impression of who Dan Slott is. It's funny, it's cute, it shows a lot of love for the history of comics while at the same time twisting it a little bit. I love this scene that happens in the first volume where Silver Surfer and his human companion run into the Guardians of the Galaxy, and the way that the Silver Surfer describes the Guardians of the Galaxy at first, his companion thinks that they're like the space version of customs and border control, and Star-Lord interjects and he's like, no, we're nothing like that. And then his next question is, how long are you staying on Earth? Are you visiting for business or pleasure? And then Rocket Raccoon is like, did you bring any foreign flora or fauna with you? And I just thought that was just like such a funny little bit with how popular those characters have gotten. It was a great experience. The funniest part of that was as Bill and I were about to leave the room after Dan Slott was done, the next organizer came in and started cleaning up, and Dan Slott had left his glass of water behind, and he sort of vocalized, he's like, I think this is Dan Slott's water. And I sort of turned to Bill and I thought for a second, like, should I drink Dan Slott's water? Will it imbue me with the power to be a famous writer? And so for the rest of the weekend, we referred to that as Slottwater. So,
which doesn't sound so. It doesn't sound so appetizing without the backstory. But now,
now you're just gonna crave Slottwater.
bottle now available at 7-Eleven everywhere.
Yeah. One thing I also have to say is Matt was the perfect roommate. Seemed to be on the exact same sleep schedule, which goes a long way sometimes.
You let me drink all of the coffee. You let me drink all of the booze.
Mm-hmm. It was such a pleasure finally hanging out with you. It was a kind of relaxed weekend, which was nice. There wasn't a lot of con agenda, how to meet this person, blah, 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 none of that stuff. We went to a couple of other panels. Now, I just have to preface this. You're going to hear a lot about panels from me because if you've been following what's been going on with me, I've had a lot of foot and leg problems, so I can't stay on my feet as long as I have been able to in the past. I hope this is a temporary situation, but I'm still having foot and leg problems. Matt, we also had the Power Pack panel that we sat in on with Louise Simonson and June Brigman that went through
that was great.
Yeah, that went through the history of Power Pack and their involvement. Despite the host, the moderator, an excellent panel on the involvement of music and comics, with a really diverse panel that included Pig Craig Russell and Timothy Truman and Ed Pisker. So you had genres of music that ranged from opera to hip hop. I was kind of blown away that Mark Buckingham mentioned one of my favorite albums, Liberation by the Divine Comedy. I was like just blown away by that. It was just such a great time, Matt, just walking around with you. We had a chance to see some of our past guests on the show, like Jamal Igle and Rich Rivera and Rafer Roberts. It was always a good shopping show. I got some good stuff, and Matt let me bin dive a little bit without too much distraction, and it was a great time, and I really hope we get a chance to do that again in the very near future, let's say. So
yeah, for sure. It was such a satisfying experience for me on all levels. I loved the opportunity to meet creators that I've never met before. Michael Cho was there. He gave me some great sort of tips on illustrators to sort of go back and research and study a bit more. And Bill and I were able to find some work by Milton Caniff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was great to just take that recommendation and immediately, put it to good use. And yeah, it was it was good for resetting my motivations about comics. I just kind of felt like a lot more relaxed, and it just sort of helped validate that, like, yeah, this is all really great, and I'm glad that I've spent so much of my life, investing my time and my energy into these characters and these creators, and yeah, it was great.
Cool. All right, then the next weekend was New York Comic Con, and my New York Comic Con started on the Tuesday before the con with the event at Rock Bar, which it seems we have either an event at Rock Bar or at Way Station that one of us is involved with somehow, and that was with Chris Cummins' Sci-Fi Explosion, which was centered around these kooky sci-fi clips, and the part of the show that I was involved in was a segment called Video Music Book Club, where Chris shows some videos, mostly from the 80s, and we kind of, not exactly Mystery Science Theater 3000 them, but talk about them afterwards, and that was a good time. But Thursday is where Brian comes in, or actually Wednesday, because that's when you had your event with Chris. That's right, Brian?
No, Thursday.
So you were doubled. So you had two things going Thursday. So
it was a long day.
Okay, so why don't you tell us about it?
So my con experience was kind of all over the place. The Thursday night, like you said, Chris Cummins had his Doctor Who event. That is always a pleasure to be a part of. It was at the Way Station, as it has been for the last 5 years. The crowd was less than it normally has been, and I attribute that wholly to the move, because it used to be on Wednesdays. I think Thursday is a harder night, and we found that out ourselves when we did events Thursday nights. As far away as Rock Bar and the Way Station, in this case in Brooklyn, were from the show. But we had a great time. Elisa, who does the Doctor puppet, was back. She was there last year and was there to basically just be there. But she was dressed as the new Doctor and looked amazing. Like, she wasn't in the costume contest because that would be unfair because she was a panelist. But it was very, very cool to see her in person again and see her awesome outfit. And she played her last Doctor Who puppet video segment that she made that she's been working on for the last 2 years, and I think she's basically done at this point with that project, but it was an epic and amazing little tribute. Chris did a great show. We did the usual trivia and Doctor Who contest. A lot of people got prizes because Chris always does a great job of getting prizes. And, overall, it's a lovely event. I'm glad Chris does it. I'm glad I'm a part of it. There was a possibility that I would not make it, and I'm glad I did. But earlier in the day, we had the Comic-Con itself, Thursday, the first day of the show. It is an interesting day, usually not as busy as other days, and this year was definitely no exception. In fact, I don't think they sold out Thursday this year. But overall, manageable chaos. Lots and lots of people, but very manageable. I was able to get around the show floor, see some of my friends, including the Art of Bianca. She is a friend of mine from Orlando. She travels all over the country now doing art, selling art her own art at different conventions. And she was there doing some cool stuff with her husband, Tim, who I had not met. Got to see her, got to see Geeks Out friends briefly. Saw Kevin at the booth and just caught up with him for a little bit. It's the Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, not Artist Alley. This is the vendor floor. So it's always chaos and pandemonium. But, you go around to your major exciting stops and see the different vendors. Pat was there with me, of course. He wanted to see the Bandai exhibit because he always buys a new Sailor Moon shirt. And, just the usual chaos. Marvel had a lot of stuff, but nothing that we really caught that was, remarkable and exciting. I know later on in the weekend they had some cool stuff. Artist Alley, of course, always that is the highlight. I got to see all of the people I wanted to see there. It was lots of just talking to Dan Parent. By the way, finally saw the curling commission I had him do. Mm-hmm. At least the sketch he had done it, and it actually looks great. So that'll hopefully be finished up soon, and I'll get my book back at some point in the future. Who knows? That's fine. Take as long as you want, Dan, because you are fabulous. I saw Janet Leigh. She showed me art from her new project, which is the Mermaids project with Amy Chu for Random House, I think. I saw Ryan Brown and Charles Soule. They're always paired up now, it seems like. And Ryan had a new book. I'm sorry, I'm going through my little stack here. Called Trash Bridge. I'm not going to review it. It is available on his Etsy store, but it's very Ryan Brown, and it is his writing project for him, and he is working with an artist for it, Seeley, not Tim. Who is Seeley? Steve Seeley, possibly related to Tim, actually. They're all in Chicago.
Yes,
so,
it's the same last name spelling, so.
Yeah, I
think there is a connection there.
Let's see. I walked by Mitch Gerrits, who was signing with Tom King, and if there wasn't a crazy line, I would have totally done it.
Oh, and I have to say, I'm so glad you told me to walk by, because, woof.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seriously. A, his art is amazing. B, his storytelling is amazing. C,
his
they're a great
beard
partner.
is amazing.
But his beard is epic, and it makes mine look so sad and wiry. Who else? Our friend Tim Bernikovich, and I can never say his name. His buddy who he does art with. I'll look it up. Super sweet guy on a lot of the gay panels from Brazil, I believe. I saw T. Franklin, a good friend who I've missed dearly. We'll talk about issues later, but I'm going to be talking about her Jook Joint #1. I got to spend some time with her. And Nicole Brown and Dave Baker. No, I'm sorry, Nicole. I can't ever say her name. Go and Dave Baker, who do the Fuck Off Squad, which is a fabulous little indie book, which I also have here in my little wrapper. This actually, I think, came out from Image. They have been like self-publishing. Let me double check that I'm not lying to you all. It is not Image. I am lying to you. It's Silver Sprocket. It looks like an Image book. It's that high quality. It's Silver Sprocket. And Fuck Off Squad is fantastic. If you like sort of the modern, I hate saying modern, but youth voice, if you will, younger comic creator cartoonists. It's fabulous. It's a great book. Highly recommend it. Oh, and I saw, oh my gosh, Christopher Anka bought his Fighting Waifus zine that he does, and it's fabulous.
God damn, you got a lot in on one day.
I did. No, I had to. It's the thing. If you do one day, it focuses you. It makes you really pick who you want to see, and you have to hit those places, and you still find time for other stuff. Last but not least, I think, Yoshi Yoshitani, who is an illustrator who has done some really cool stuff. I've actually bought a few things from her at Heroes Con, where I met her. She was in the Geeks Out panel. I bought a...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, her stuff is amazing.
Yes. I bought a giant work of one of her Valentine's Day prints. I'll send a picture. Maybe I'll post it up on the Facebook page. It's a little dicey, a little racy, but it's super sexy, and I love it. So then, of course, I wandered over to the Queer Lounge because I had heard about this new thing they're doing called the Queer Lounge, and I met Bill, who was taking a load off, hanging out in the Queer Lounge with all the fabulous queer people in the Queer Lounge, and that was lovely. It's like our tradition now. We don't quite line our schedules up because we're both all over the place, but we always find at least a little bit of time to sit down, usually sitting because we're both exhausted at that point, and catch up, which was lovely.
But I have to say, in the future, what a great place to meet up with people. That you want to see. So I did take advantage of that over the weekend with some other friends.
It's so obvious that is a good idea, and I'm so glad that Reed Pop and in this case the other different GLAAD, the Trevor Project, is that one of the ones that did the bullying stuff?
They weren't involved with this, but it was GLAAD, and it was also actually on the other days co-sponsored by the WWE.
Really?
World Wrestling Entertainment, because they have a gay storyline with lesbian wrestlers, and they had a meet and greet for people.
Well, that is good to know.
On Saturday, which was a huge line.
Really?
And it wasn't just LGBT wrestlers. They had some other personnel there too. So it was really nice to see like a bridge like that. And I'm telling you, a huge line went all the way back to the food court.
When we were there, it was the Winona Earp.
Winona Earp, yeah, which is I didn't know that. Apparently, they're like rabid fans of Winona Earp.
I don't know. Like I've heard of it before, but I've never watched it. So
it was a comic book. Who is it? Bo Smith? I forget who.
I don't know. I can't remember. Yeah, but I do know that it was published by Dynamite at first, wasn't it?
No. I think it was Image actually first.
I know it's bounced around.
It's like it's IDW right now.
IDW, that's what I was thinking. Not that.
Yeah.
Well, it was lovely finding that place. I think that's a fabulous idea. I hope Repop does this at New York next year, but other shows they're involved with as well, because finding local queer partners, whether they're GLAAD or WWE or whoever it is, it's so nice to have that space where anybody, all you had to do is you had to scan your badge or give them some info to stop bullying. I mean, for a good cause. And they gave little candies out, and I'm sure other days they had probably water and stuff. Just really nice space for that kind of thing. And I want to see that continue on. So yeah, I had a great time. And then, like I said, I went to the Doctor Who thing. But yeah, I mean, I love New York Comic Con. I love that it's so focused for me for a day. It actually was at first kind of an inconvenience, but now it's actually probably the best thing I could do. But Bill, I know you had a far more expansive experience, and you got to see some really cool panels that I missed out on. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I'll track those. First of all, I have to say I booked a hotel room about 3 blocks away from the Javits just for the Thursday night, because I had something going on Thursday night that I couldn't go to the Doctor Who, but podcast related. It was a live My Favorite Murder podcast, which was amazing. But since I knew I had that going on, I decided to book a room. And I am so doing that in the future, if the points and the wallet allow. I did not go to all 4 days. For the second year in a row, I took Saturday off. A lot of people were telling me that Sunday was actually more crowded than Saturday. So this, with what you were saying about Thursday being pretty easy to maneuver and not sold out, Brian, you've also been at this con when Thursday was insane. Sometimes it doesn't seem to be a rhyme and reason with the crowds. That was the case. So Thursday panels I went to was the first one was the entertainment is LGBTQ. It was nice to see with the programming that I think there were at least 3 queer panels over the weekend, but this was the one that I attended when panelists included Marguerite Bennett, Phil Jimenez, and also Lila Sturgis, who used to be, before they transitioned, Matthew Sturgis, co-writer of, I don't think he co-wrote Fables, but he wrote, Jack of Fables. He co-wrote and has a number of DC Comics credits. It was very interesting hearing perspective of a writer from a trans perspective who certainly had his feet in conventional storytelling prior to. I went to the Constantine City of Demons panel, so saw some clips from that. I still haven't watched it, though. Like, I have the DVD. DC Universe Digital Service on Thursday afternoon, the panel, which is best known for everybody in attendance, including me, getting 15 free months of DC Universe. So I was really happy with that. Went to the DC Vertigo panel. Sometimes, like Matt was saying, when you see some creators talk about their projects, sometimes there's a reference point that makes you more interested. And that certainly happened for me with Ben Blacker with Hex Wives. Lois and Clark reunion panel with Terry Hatcher and Dean Cain. Went to that.
What?
Yep. Yeah, I was feet away from both of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so... And it was nice to see, like, they have this, like, really quirky chemistry, it was strange because, like, you almost thought you were watching an episode. And if you go to, I think, Sci-Fi Wire or one of those outlets, they were pretty consistent about providing the main stage and the Javits Center panels, so you can see that online. And on Friday night, I met up with Jason and David and Vince from the 11 O'Clock Comics podcast and hung out with some other EOCers like Dave Proust. I still called it a fairly early night, but like fairly early night at that point was like, getting a 12:10 train home. So I hung out at home on Saturday, and then Sunday. Now, Brian, I don't know if you've done this, but a staple of New York Comic Con over the last couple of years has been having certain events, sometimes big events, outside of the Javits. They use venues like the Hammerstein Ballroom, which is traditionally a concert venue for some of that. Have you gone to anything outside of the Javits for any kind of panel?
It's funny because I come from Long Island. I'm staying usually with Pat's family. I take the Lear in. I get to Penn Station, and when you leave Penn Station, the Hammerstein I think is around there, but I know the Verizon, the Hulu thing this year was right there when I left the station. And I didn't go to it, but I know of these other events. The only one I've ever gone that was off property, that was like a big thing, was the Mr. Robot premiere last year, so for season 3, and that was just maybe 5-10 minutes up the road, and it was amazing, and I'm glad I went because it was kind of like their last big hurrah at this point. But no, I have not been to like the Hammerstein. I've not been to any of the other big events.
You mentioned the Hulu Theater, which is within Madison Square Garden, has a history as the Paramount, and then some other names. You know how these corporate things work. It's now known as the Hulu Theater at MSG, and I went to the Riverdale panel, the Gotham panel for their final season, and also How to Train Your Dragon, where they showed 3 full scenes from the upcoming movie. I'm sure people in Bear circles know that the writer and director Dean DeBlois is in the life in terms of Bears. And then rounded out with a couple of hours of shopping and more panels. Hung out a lot with my Thunder Agents podcast co-host Rob Stager, and a lot of time with my friend Aaron. If you've seen pictures, he cosplays as Mario and does a damn good job at it.
Okay, so let me talk about him real quick because this is hilarious to me. So he was
this was amazing. I didn't know this about Aaron.
Yeah,
so yeah, detail.
Right? So we're at the Doctor Who event, and he's dressed as Mario, and I'm thinking, oh, this gotta be Chris Scott, the Mario cosplay guy, who has like set up a shop at these conventions before. I know I've seen him, well, not this case, Aaron, but another Mario cosplayer set up at the MegaCon or whatever. So I thought that's who this was. So I'm sitting there, and he's like, oh, I'm helping Chris out. I'm doing photos and video, basically doing like photos for him. I said, oh, that's awesome. We talked a little bit before the show. Fine, great. I said, hey, I'm going to put my little GoPro here. I'm going to set we can record it. Could you babysit it if you're sitting there? Great. Awesome. Super nice guy, super friendly. So I'm sitting there. We do the show. I'm up on stage. I'm watching him. It's fine. And then after the show, we go to dinner after. But we're talking, and I think it's one of those things where we're like, oh, let's exchange Facebook. So we go go on Facebook and we look, and there's like a ton of mutual friends. Now, bear collectors, obviously, this community, there's a lot of us that tend to, collect each other. It's a whole thing where I may know somebody who I've never met before on Facebook because they look cute, whatever, across the country. But in this case, it wasn't just that. It was that plus Phi Mu Alpha, which is my fraternity, and all these people who I'm like, okay, when I see this, typically it means that they're fraternity, they're Phi Mu Alpha brother, or they went to like a music school or something and they just know a lot of them. But I sit there and I said, Aaron, are you in Phi Mu Alpha? And he looks at me and just gives me this face that is both shock and like, oh, of course you're a Phi Mu Alpha brother. Like that mutual understanding that, of course, we're both Phi Mu Alpha. It's a delightful experience. You've never experienced that in an organization. It's really kind of a cool moment. But yes, we're in the same fraternity, music fraternity together. We didn't go to the same schools, of course, but like we're like, oh, that hoe? You know that? Like, it was one of those grand experiences where I immediately take a picture with him, send it to my friend here in Orlando who had gone to school with him and knew him. And I'm like, oh, hey, look who this is. It was delightful. He was delightful. I'm sad I didn't spend more time talking to him because I was only there that one day and then we left for DC on Friday morning. But, seriously, Aaron was delightful.
Just thinking other stuff, I forgot to say that almost every con I get commissions from Art and from Franco. And at Baltimore, I got a beautiful version of Death from Franco. And at the same token,
that was great.
Yeah. And at the same token, Franco, that I was with Franco, our friend Wendy Freeman was with Art Baltazar at a different con. So we took pictures and sent them to each other. And then at New York Comic Con, I got a Golden Pharaoh, which is a very obscure DC Comics character that Art Baltazar put in the Superpowers miniseries, and I got a Golden Pharaoh on a Superpowers sketch cover. And I guess that's about it. Before we sign off about the Comic Cons, I also want to thank Randy over at Baltimore Comic Con for continuing to provide us with press passes. And New York Comic Con, please keep viewing us as at least pros, if not press, given the difficulty of obtaining tickets on a conventional platform for that. And that's about it. Con wrap up for Baltimore and New York. And I'm going to throw the mic over to Steve because this poor guy, even Skype is commenting that he hasn't said anything in half an hour. So, Steve, anything you want to ask us about our con experiences, the things that maybe we referenced to you that we haven't talked about, or anything that you wanted to know before we move on to comics?
Well, one of the biggest things about going to a con like New York is free swag. I mean, free swag is one of those things that you try to. There's a lot of junk, especially for all the the media booths that just throw crap at you, like little posters or buttons or whatever, to watch whatever show or upcoming season or whatnot. But did you guys get anything memorable that was handed out at booths or part of some of the satellite events? That happened, and same thing at Baltimore as well. Like anything exciting or cool that you picked up that is specific to the con?
Yeah, well, Baltimore isn't swaggy, but Matt and I both got the tumblers that was with Captain Marvel. That was for this. Every year, Baltimore Comic Con has its own tumbler, its own Toon tumbler, the glasses, and we got that there. Matt, do you remember any?
Yeah, there was that serendipitous meeting where we had breakfast at the hotel.
Oh, right,
the guy
with Valiant, yeah.
Yeah, the guys sitting next to us were running the Valiant booth, and we didn't have any reason to assume that they, were with Valiant. We just sort of struck up conversation. We were all wearing comic book themed T-shirts, and they urged us to come by their booth at the convention, because I talked about the fact that I cosplayed as Bloodshot for an event here in Victoria earlier this year, and showed them the photos. They loved it. They had a much hotter Bloodshot there with like a 6-pack and stuff. And I was like, this guy needs to hit the road. He's making me look bad. But they gave me this amazing free comic book. It's the first issue of the current Bloodshot run. I think it's Bloodshot Salvation, but with like a gold trade dress on the front, and they said that it's a version of the number ones that they only give out at events to fans, and they don't sell them. And so I was like, oh my god, this is so great. Like I did it out of my love for the character and for how much fun I've had with the Valiant series, and I never expected to get anything out of it, and it was such a cool part.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool. And Bloodshot Salvation, I mean, that's such a great series anyway, but now you've got like a super unique, number one copy. That's really cool. That is really cool.
Just with New York, I can say that I got the pack that was specific for DC Universe members, apart from the free membership. They also had for existing members, of which I'm both now. And that included these variant covers of a Shazam promotional comic that they're putting out in connection with the film, and Aquaman and Titans #1. And it also came with a metal Robin throwing star. And I also got the free, well, maybe I got more than one, let's say, the free figure of Mr. Freeze from Funko's upcoming DC Primal Age line of He-Man influenced superhero toys, I guess is the only way to put it. And
those are super weird looking.
They
I'm
are.
just gonna say those are weird looking.
But I have to say, in person, not the villains are like super weird, but the heroes look really cool when you're up in person, and especially the Batcave. God knows what the SRP is of the Batcave. That's got to be like a $200 thing, but in person they were pretty cool.
That's pretty sweet.
All right, well, we're gonna move on to comics. And Steve, since you have the mic, and I feel bad for you just sitting idly by for probably going to be the first 2/3 of this episode, why don't you tell us about something you're reading that you're digging?
Well, I am grateful for all the pity, not being able to join anybody for either New York or Baltimore this year. But that just meant that I got to sit at home and read all these other comics that I picked up at the store or through DCBS. And one of them that I'm actually reading that is pretty much coming out in preparation for the X-Men soft relaunch is the X-Men Black series of one-shots featuring the villains. And the one most recently, as of this recording, I think there's another one that comes out tomorrow. We're recording this on Tuesday. I read the first one with Magneto. It was pretty good. It was Chris Claremont. Not my favorite story, but definitely a good character study. But this next issue had a much different feel to it. In fact, when I found out who was writing it, I kind of understood it. In this issue of X-Men Black, it was Mojo as the feature villain, written by Scott Aukerman of comedy Bang Bang fame and the Earwolf Podcast Network and lots of other absurdist comedy. And I realized that Mojo really does fit very well with a comedian writing him, because he's a ridiculous villain. He's absurd. He's this ridiculous super media product of like media oversaturation, and of course is way over the top. And so with Scott Aukerman writing him, and I think on art it was sort of a team up that Marvel's been doing quite a bit, especially with a lot of these. Especially in their X-Men titles, where there's a lot of double shipping going on. But I think probably to get this out a lot faster, they had both Nick Bradshaw and Andre Luna Araujo on art duties, and you can actually see the difference between the two. They don't blend very well. They're both very good and they have their own strengths, but you can definitely tell the difference between Bradshaw and Araujo's art. But Ackerman basically writes Mojo as a kind of creepy weirdo, and for some strange reason has him develop a crush on a punky emo girl that he sees at a local coffee shop. As much of a premise as it is, it's wonderful in that he somehow teams up Mojo and Glob to go hang out in the city together and talk about how they're both very, very weird, crazy creatures, and don't worry about what other people think about you. You know you're cool, so you're A-okay, which is such a bizarre thing. I mean, this is Mojo. This is a character who has tried murdering all of the X-Men multiple times, has created bizarre clone versions of all the X-Men for the purpose of killing them off. And he's just hanging out with one of the also, one of the most bizarre X-Men characters of the past 10 years. Glob, who is just basically this blob with visible internal organs and bones. And it was a ton of fun. There's of course, there has to be some action in there, which there is, but it really comes off as a goofy buddy comedy issue more than anything else. And of course, there is the second part of this X-Men Black series that's been focusing on Apocalypse and kind of this strange evolution or devolution that Apocalypse is going through. But the main story here, I think, is great. So I would recommend picking this up. If you're not interested in the rest of the Black issues, this one, I think if you're looking for a funny breath of fresh air for something that I think was supposed to be a little bit purposefully dark and broody, especially after coming out of the Magneto issue where everything was just so heavy and depressing and thinky. This one is just goofy and fun, and I kind of am looking forward to reading more from Scott Aukerman. I'm hoping that they give him a couple more things to do, maybe an annual here or there, because he's pretty fun to read. And that's it. Anybody else reading this?
I guess that's a no.
I have it. No. Sorry, I had my mic muted. I have it. I have both, but I'm so far behind on my books that it's on my. I have nothing but time on the flight out to another country, so I will be able to read this very soon.
Well, it's good because it's just a one shot. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything else. So I think that's probably the good things with the X-Men Black series. I mean, other than the continuous thread in the Apocalypse. Multi-port story, all of these are standalone and you can just kind of, read them if you want. They're not, at least I don't think they're going to really, bring a whole bunch of change or, be sort of necessary canon for the upcoming Uncanny X-Men series. But it's fun. I recommend it, especially this one.
Okay, let's go over to Matt. Matt, you said that Baltimore was kind of rekindling some interest in comics, and why don't you just tell us about something that you're enjoying?
Yeah, sure. So there was a independent comic book retailer that we stopped by their booth because they had really great stickers and a fun cardboard stand-up to take photos next to. And the comic book was pretty good, too. So both Bill and I picked up the first issue of Cyko Ko, which is sort of a wacky Adult Swim look and feel kind of a comic book about a surfing robot and tiki stuff, and it's just a whole bunch of wacky elements. It was a lot of fun though, and I really felt like for a first issue, the artwork is really tight and fun, and great aesthetic. And for taking a chance on a totally unknown property, I thought it was really great. It's written by Rob Feldman and drawn by Peter Simeti, and super fun independent book.
And I think it's also worth mentioning that it's at a very appealing price point, $1.50. That is what a lot of the books in the Alterna line are. There was one Alterna book I really enjoyed called Amazing Age. They tend to be like 3 to 5 issue miniseries, and I echo your sentiments there, Matt. I thought it was a load of fun. And like you said, a very tight first issue. If you guys have an extra $1.50 there, Steve and Brian, you may want to spend it on that. Brian, how about you?
All right.
What are you digging?
So I have a bunch of books that I've been sort of like rediscovering or randomly picking up or whatever, but like my main Marvel DC stuff is like, again, big backlog. But when I was at the convention, I picked up Jook Joint #1 from Image, written by T. Franklin, art by Aletha E. Martinez, with colors by Shari Shankhama, and lettering by Taylor Esposito. This book, I have been watching T's social media, and she's been posting art from it and some stuff, and it looks very interesting and very like racy, sexy. I don't want to say lesbian because I'm sure it's more than that, but those are the panels that she's been posting, so why not? But also African American, like tying back to this concept of a juke joint, which, if you're not familiar with the term, I believe it was around maybe the post-Civil War, let's say Reformation era, you would have these sort of rural speakeasy, local bar, pop-up bar in today's parlance or whatever, run by people who were trying to provide a safe space for people of color, minorities of any kind, but specifically people of color in that time frame, and they were known for being a little rowdy, a little bit out of control, a little loose. And so based on that idea, she has taken this idea and sort of brought it into the South, which I think a lot of them were probably Southern, but not necessarily only. And so she's got like this kind of voodoo vampire feel to that concept, and the book is entirely focused around violence to females, against females, right? Sexual harassment, grab them by the pussy, and or the full Kavanaugh, if you will. However you want to frame it in today's modern discussions. But this is there's a trigger warning at the beginning of the book, which is very, not that I would be triggered by it, but I'm sure there are people who are glad before they dive into this that they have a warning of what's coming. But this group of African American women who seem to be like in this voodoo vampire sort of coven. I hate to keep mixing metaphors, but the mythology is very loose. They are running this joint, and they are preying upon the men who would mistreat women, and so much so that they take it upon themselves to like harvest them, feast on them, get their vengeance in whatever ways they can. But they're also looking out for each other and for other women who are in situations of domestic violence. And of course, in this era, it's more probable than not that this is happening in a lot of unfortunate households. So there is lots of nudity, mostly female, but there is at least one penis shot. Just double checking. Yep, that's penis. Nice double, pardon the pun, nice double page spread. And this is the thank you. This is the men that are being feasted on, basically. But so it's not sexy. It's just sort of that's his dick. But
is it Bruce Wayne worthy?
No, it's no bad dick.
Similar? Oh, okay, it's no bad
dick. No. But
that would be an interesting crossover.
I love T. She's a very dynamic person. She definitely has gotten herself into trouble on social media at times, and she acknowledges that she's a outspoken person of color. I've been on a panel with her where I've had to hold her back from attacking somebody else because she said words that she did not agree with, and I think actually Steve and Bill were there for that lovely experience.
One of my favorite panel memories, actually.
Oh, man,
I don't envy you. Tough. I don't envy you where you were sitting and where how you were involved in that, but yeah, no, the restraint that was necessary on that panel was fantastic.
She's very self-aware, but unfortunately she has some medical conditions that give her pain management, and she mixes alcohol, she can get a little out of control at times. But at the con, she was lovely. Her daughter was there helping her run her booth. I really got to spend a good, lovely 20 minutes talking to her about Jook Joint, and she's the one, of course, if you're familiar with Bingo Love, the Kickstarter book that I think a couple of us have and been a part of the Kickstarter for. Great, fantastic book about some queer women who, as they got older after having a very, quote unquote traditional heterosexual life, came back together and reunited themselves. So she's doing a new collection of Bingo Love with a bunch of different collaborators, and that's going to be really exciting. So it was lovely to catch up with her. But Jook Joint #1 is out. It is by Image, so there's a reasonable chance you can find it at your store, your LCS. And it's only issue #1, and I don't know how many. It doesn't say, so it's probably one of these. Let's see how it does. But
yeah,
if you can...
I believe at least the initial image solicits were 1 of 5.
That would make sense then. And she may have even said oh yeah, I'm only doing so much, but like I said, it was interesting. But seriously, check it out. T is an amazing person, and I really am glad she is out there producing comics, creating art, as far as creating original stories from a perspective that we don't have a lot of in comics. And that's not enough to recommend this issue. Obviously, that's a nice bonus, but the issue is really good. It's a fun story, fun in the sense that you're, getting some vengeance on the men who may have mistreated you, if you're into that, or if you've had issues with that. I think this will be a cathartic experience. But as a fan of comics, this is material we don't get a lot of, and I'm glad it's out there, and I'm really happy that it's somebody I know and care about. So check out Jook Joint at your local comic shop or on the digital platforms. I'm sure it's available all over the place.
Okay. Well, I'm going to drink from the Slottwater fountain for my choice book to talk about.
Slottwater.
Slottwater.
Refreshing.
We will be making that famous now. Bottled Slottwater.
It's very drippy.
Well, the books that I am talking about are the Fantastic Four numbers 1 and 2. Again, this was Marvel's relaunch of the Fantastic Four after over 2 years of being absent from comic book shops. The first issue has garnered pretty negative reviews, and reading it, I can pretty much understand why. It's a little meandering. It covers what Ben and Johnny are up to, which you've seen more of over in Marvel 2 and 1, but it covers where they are at a particular moment. Now, if anybody has read Fantastic Four, the 1960s books, the Stan and Jack books, you'll know from the first issue that the Four signal was written out, the Fantastic Four, which was the signal that the four members had to convene and set themselves off on a particular adventure. Johnny and Ben are at different points in Manhattan and see this up in the air. And Johnny goes to investigate. It turns out that they are members of the Yancey Street Gang, the 2018 version, that were just pulling a prank. As you go through the issue, you see other former members who were briefly members of the Fantastic Four have some involvement, like She-Hulk and Power Man and Medusa and Crystal. And you see what big heart Ben Grimm has in how the gang members are treated. But at the end of the story, you do see a different Four signal, which may reveal that the missing Reed and Sue are not as incommunicado as was thought. Second issue was much, much better. It covers what Reed and Sue have been up to, literally building and leading to the destruction of universes. I'm not kidding. You also have their kids, Franklin and Valeria, with them, and the other kids that were members of the, what was that called? What was the foundation? What the hell was that called?
Future Foundation.
Future Foundation. Sorry about that. Including Alex Power from Power Pack and also their resident scientific advisor, Dragon Man. They've been on this galactic quest, for lack of a better word. And something happens which brings them back to Earth. And it was a much, much better, much more streamlined story. One thing that was frustrating about the first issue was that I could tell from previous work that Dan Slott could really write the FF, that he knew that world. There was a fantastic miniseries of Spider-Man and the Human Torch, which covers Johnny and Peter's friendship over a 5-issue period and over time. And also the tie-in issues of Amazing, which linked with the first few issues of Hickman's FF when Peter took over Johnny's slot when Johnny was presumed dead. It was refreshing to see that after a sort of clunky start, do see that this guy has an affection for these characters, a genuine affection for these characters, and that he knows what to put in the mix. And the last page of number 2 is the shit that all comic fans live for, as far as I'm concerned. You love turning that page and seeing a development like that, and an optimistic development. I'll put it that way. So if you didn't dig Fantastic Four number 1, give number 2 a try. So that's the book I'm talking about, Fantastic Four numbered 1 and 2. Anybody else reading this?
I absolutely mean to. They just didn't have any copies left when I went to my local comic shop.
Oh, okay.
Bill, I am reading it, and I agree. The first issue was clunky. The second issue was better. My only issues were that the Hickman stuff that kind of was the last sighting of the Sue and Reed and the family. That I would have preferred it to be a little closer in tone to that, and it's more whimsical, and that's fine. Fantastic Four shouldn't be ponderous. But I don't know. There was a bit of a like Hickman's ideas were sort of there, but not done justice as a handoff. But it's been a while, and so it's also one of the things where I might be remembering it differently. I didn't go back and revisit the End of Battle World to see or Secret Wars to see oh yeah, actually. And they didn't dig in. Like Hickman didn't really explore what concept he set up when they were out creating universes. So all of that to be said, Slott's an amazing writer. I'm happy he's doing this book. I would just want to see that the 2-in-1 that oh god, what's his name?
Chip Zdarsky.
Yeah, Chip's been doing. If that could dovetail, and I think it will, within an issue or two. It's behind.
It feels like 2-in-1 is the prequel to this.
Absolutely. But handing off that, and from what I understand, they're still going to keep doing 2-in-1 with other people in the Fantastic Four. So it's always, or it's going to be for a little while still, adventures of 2 of the Fantastic Four, together. I think there's a future solicit for Sue and Johnny or something. So anyway, all that's nitpicky, and who cares? They are fantastic. The story is very, if you like Matt had been saying, the Silver Surfer that Slott had been writing, that sort of cosmic tone, but with a little bit of humor and a little, references to the past, all of that's there, and it is lovely. I'm glad they're back, and I'm glad Slott's writing it.
I wouldn't necessarily want the Silver Surfer tone for this book, but I can see a dovetailing into.
Oh yeah.
Some of those elements, yeah.
His Silver Surfer was very Doctor Who. I mean,
Yep.
Anybody who knows Doctor Who and read that book, you're like, okay, I see what he's doing. He's got a companion. He's exploring the universe, time and space, and having wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey adventures. So you can't do that exactly with Fantastic Four, at least in that same structure, but there's similarities and there's overlaps. So, Slott's a good writer for this.
And Dan Slott said that he has a story bucket. So it's the bucket where you sort of draw your best ideas from when you take on a new book. And he said his bucket for Fantastic Four is so deep, he's just never going to hit the bottom.
Yeah.
And that sort of made me excited about, his take on these characters, because it sounds like he's got a lot of personal investment in them, and he's probably going to go really cool places that are going to be difficult for him to hint at right away. But, he's definitely a writer that builds foundation and it later pays off.
I wasn't quite taken by Sarah Pacelli's art. It wasn't a hand-in-glove fit. I love her Sue. I think she does an amazing Sue Storm. But Reed doesn't even look like Reed as far as I'm concerned in some bits. that took me out of the story a little bit, but also this is a series that is going to have a number of artists, and I am very excited about Aaron Cooter writing an
Oh,
upcoming arc.
yes.
Yeah, I think
Very,
it's
very
gonna
excited, yes.
be really looking forward to that. Okay, well, we're going to wrap this episode up, and when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment, which is where we spotlight something, be it a comic book or a TV program, a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, may be interested in sampling. I'm going to go over to our esteemed former co-host and current guest, Matt. What is your woof of the week?
Okay, so as you guys know, I like to cosplay as a pirate. I'm really into pirate stuff. I discovered the best board game ever. It's called Libertalia, and it is a pirate-themed board game that's super easy to play with people that are unfamiliar with the game. You basically play out a week's worth of bounty hauling, and everybody gets to play with the same pirate ranks, but they get to play the ranks in a secret order, and you flip the cards up, and whoever has the lowest rank for the pirates drawn gets to do their sort of like special effect first, which is sometimes to assassinate another pirate or take extra loot, those kinds of things. And then the pirate with the highest rank after those special effects gets to take their loot first, and some of the loot's good and some of the loot's cursed. Anyways, super fun. Love the themes in it. It's not really terribly intricate to set up, so if you're playing with family or people that are not super into board games, it's a very playable game to just sort of like break out in a social situation and get people to try it for the first time. Tried it with my family. It was kind of like herding cats, but we made it through it. And it's become one of my new favorite board games.
Okay, let's go over to Brian. Brian, what is your woof of the week?
So I will take this opportunity to share a little personal excitement of my life. For the first time ever, I am very excited to be going out of the country for more than just a cruise, because I have done that. I am into my early 40s, and I am embarrassed to say I've never been out of the country for more than a cruise. So I'm going to get to go to the country of Japan for a few weeks for work, but I will be taking copious amounts of photos for the Instagram. So my woof of the week, which is a very, very selfishly self-promoting thing, is to share my Instagram, because I think you might enjoy living vicariously through my adventures in Japan. So I will be posting everything on Instagram, Flame on Bryan with a Y. And I will, maybe if there's anything really exciting, like there is a Tokyo Eagle. Actually, there's two that I will be visiting, and in one of them there's a giant mural of Bara from the artist Massive that I may take a picture in, and I may have to share that. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's like a must, So, if it's something really comic book bear appropriate, I might pass it over to our Facebook, platform. But at Flame on Bryan, Bryan with a Y, you can follow my crazy Japanese adventures, and I'd love to see some new Insta followers and some love, and I'm excited. I'm nervous and freaking out a little bit, but I am very excited for this new adventure. So follow along, and hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Brian, first of all, we're all happy for you. Second of all, we're all very jealous of you.
I know. I don't want to rub it in. I really don't.
I know it's like, like traveling for work isn't all just a vacation, but it sounds like you're going to have enough downtime that you're going to have a lot of opportunities for fun. So buy us cool things. Right? Seems like a cool Christmas gift there.
I will definitely keep my eyes open.
And just for me, if you could go into one of the Tower Records.
They actually have Tower Records there?
They have a number of Tower Records in Tokyo.
Ooh, I'm excited.
They are still within the old Tower Records model, and apparently they're all wonderful. So if you can't poke in there, do that. Let's go over to Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
Well, mine's just going to be a big old letdown after going to Japan. As usual, I'm a big TV nerd, TV sci-fi specifically. And for everybody who's a big Doctor Who fan, obviously it is back after pretty much, what has it been, Brian? Like almost 2 years, really, since the
Yeah.
last actual series.
Well, Christmas special. So like,
Last year,
yeah,
November.
yeah.
But we finally have the new season of Doctor Who. But I'm not going to talk about that, even though I love Jodie Whittaker, I love the companions, everything's really cool. Even the new showrunner is pretty fun with what direction he's taking the show into. But my Wolf of the Week is actually the companion after show talk show called Whovians, which is actually Australian. And if you have a chance to find the episodes of it, I believe you can get them. If you're in Australia, obviously it's on ABC, but if you're outside of Australia, I'm sure you can find it in many other ways. But it is absolutely hilarious. If you're fans of Talking Dead, after the Walking Dead episodes, this is very similar format. It's a talk show with fans, and they look at clips of the show. They have a lot of jokey things, and of course the roundtable discussions are absolutely wonderful. Rove McManus is the host, and there's usual panelists. Adam Richard, who is a big sassy silver bear who really enjoys theories. You've also got some recurring people like Tegan Higginbotham. Like strangely named Australian actors and personalities, Bridie Connell, Cal Wilson, and a couple times we've actually had the lead singer from I can't remember the band right now, but she's been wonderful as well. I'll remember it after we record, but not a big deal. Anyway, if you have a chance to find it, Whovians, it is wonderful. It's weekly, airing after Doctor Who, so probably Sunday for those of us who are on this side of the planet, but Sunday or Monday. But I definitely recommend if you can get a hold of it.
Okay, well, my Wolf of the Week is music-based, and it's October, and that also means it's Rocktober. And I went to the second of the two-night stand by Nine Inch Nails at Radio City Music Hall. And the opening act was Indie Giants' The Jesus and Mary Chain. I have not seen the Jesus and Mary Chain since 1992. I've seen Nine Inch Nails 13 times. I did the count today. Saw them for Pretty Hate Machine, and I've seen them tour behind every album that they toured behind. This may have been the best time I've seen them. They started off with the first 4 songs from The Fragile. And there was a point where I'm talking with my straight concert husband, Tom Moynihan, and we're like, if he's going to do the whole album, we're going to be here for a while since that's a double album. Kind of strange set list. Trent even said from the stage, this is a fucked up set list, but we hope you like it. In the past few years, the stage shows for Nine Inch Nails have been very tech heavy, and this one they stripped it down. There was almost no tech backdrop. Even the lighting system was kind of bare-boned. And it really spotlighted them as a band instead of a live experience where elements like lighting and visuals come into it. They also covered David Bowie's I Can't Give Everything Away, which is the final song on his final album, Black Star. And it was a very different arrangement, very sparse and stark and really cool. And they have dates going through the end of October and then resuming in late November into mid-December. And if they are playing your area, do go. If you've never seen them before, if you've seen them in the past, this may be the best lineup he's had, including older members like Robin Finch on guitar and his cohort Atticus Ross from the soundtrack work, who is also now an official member. At the show, I was so into it. You know, with music, you kind of rely so much on downloads and, you know, listening to albums through Spotify. I had to get physical copies of the recent trilogy of releases. And that's my wolf, Nine Inch Nails. Matt, thank you so much for joining us again. I really hope it's not another 2 years before you're on the mic.
It was great to be back. Thanks a lot for having me.
We'll say it again. The name of the show is the Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. And if you want to listen to us, you can subscribe to us through iTunes and listen to us through Stitcher Radio and some other podcatching platforms. Until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear woof and an explosion, and we'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof!